suppose the music that I've tried to make with the various different musicians I work with has, for me, tried to depict the musical landscape of what I see modern Britain to be. Going to what I grew up in, we use a lot of folk music for influences. We take quite a few songs from the Northumbrian minstrelsy. Being up in the northeast, Northumbrian minstrelsy is a collection of songs and tunes from the 1800s, and then to sort of reflect the more kind of modern vibe of what's become popular in 20th century music. We've got MC Crystalise, a rapper from Manchester. He works on a lot of social narrative. I believe folk music to be a social narrative, a snapshot of a point in history, and exactly the same way MC Crystalise is reflecting that snapshot that we're living in now in his rhymes. We've got Jess Maidment that I've done a lot of writing with. She brings the kind of modern vocal style to the band. So it's really an amalgamation of styles old and new, showing the history of where our music that we listen to now has come from, but also, you know, paying our dues to the music of our traditions of the British Isles. So it's spanning, at any point it could be spanning 250 years in a certain song. I was brought up around a lot of folk music. My mum was a clog dancer. My dad was a traditional dancer as well. He was a Morris dancer. My brother, who's quite a lot older than me, he was a fiddle player. And I was brought up around a lot of traditional music, a lot of folk music, but also growing up in the late part of the 80s and 90s. I listened to so many different things, like my brother would get me into old school hip hop. We'd be listening to drum and bass, because where I come from in Bristol, drum and bass is a massive scene, with the likes of, you know, Ronnie Size, etc. So I started looking at how we could combine these things together, and then when I came to university in Newcastle, I was lucky enough to work with a group of musicians for a project called Aftershock with a musician called Nitin Sawhney, and I took a lot of influence from the kind of British Asian scene, and I worked closely with a tabla player called Arif Dervish. So I started to fuse the kind of Indian influences from that. So from coming from a traditional folk background, I've started to collaborate a lot with musicians in various genres and various circles around the country.
My emotions at the point of creation. Through pupils I see my salvation, and another chance to observe my physical. So I set you free from the umbilical. Flesh of my flesh, a world fit for human to the day of my last breath. And I cradle the innocence in my arms from arm. On the days that I live, and I still feel I receive more from you than I'll ever give.
We're working on new material now. The project that I had previously, PBS 6, you'll see some of the musicians from in this lineup. We had an album come out last year, it was in May 2010, and that went well. It's got us a lot of interest with industry professionals, which has been brilliant. So now we're working towards bringing an album out in 2012 with some of my new musicians and some other people I'm sure we'll find along the way. Really developing on the idea of what the last album was, and again making a more concise snapshot of what I believe Britain's musical landscape to be now. Still drawing on a lot of my folk influences and a lot of the modern influences that the musicians around me bring. So I'm looking forward to 2012. I think it's going to be great. Yeah, it's going to be good.